When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
Bring a little optimism into your life with The Bright Side, a new kind of daily podcast from Hello Sunshine, hosted by me, Danielle Robay.
And me, Simone Boyce. Every weekday, we're bringing you conversations about culture, the latest trends, inspiration, and so much more.
I am so excited about this podcast, The Bright Side. You guys are giving people a chance to shine a light on their lives, shine a light on a little advice that they want to share.
Listen to The Bright Side on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search The Bright Side.
I'm Johnny B. Good, the host of the podcast Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin. This podcast dives deep into the story of Ray Trapani and his company, Centratech. I'll explore how three 20-somethings built a company out of lies, deceit, and greed.
I've been saying since a very young age that I was going to be a millionaire. If someone's like, oh, what's your best way of making money? I'm like, oh, we should start some sort of scheme.
Listen to Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 397, How Cognitive Biases Cause Us to Overspend, with Amanda Montell.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And we are bringing you a guest interview a little early. I know it shouldn't be till next episode, but our friend Amanda has a book coming out this week. And I don't know if you know, but the first week of publishing for authors is super important. And so we wanted you to hear about her book and her in the week it comes out.
Yeah. And this is another good one. You all know that my favorite is guest interviews. And lately we've been doing a lot of interviews with people who aren't specifically in the personal finance space, but have really rich stuff to say, pun intended, that can absolutely positively impact our personal finances and the rest of our lives. Because again, we think we're whole people. So if we can improve ourselves in one area, it will by proxy eventually improve our financial situation as well. So this is another one of those. And I think really, really helpful in kind of getting deep down into some of our mindsets that can help us rein in impulse spending.
Yeah. But first, this episode is brought to you by complexity bias. Thinking that earning money on your money must be far too complicated for you to figure out, so you just leave it in your checking account? Stop that right now. A high-yield savings account like the one at CIT offers you 4.65% APY on your money, and that means every month interest on the money stored in that account is deposited into your account. It's not complex, so stop thinking that it is. Let your money make money. frugalfriendspodcast.com/CIT.
Do it.
Yes.
It's the best hack.
So we are writing a book, if you haven't already heard. And one of the things that I was specifically writing in my part of the book, we kind of like divided and conquered, was cognitive biases. How these, and we'll get into what cognitive biases are in the interview, but when I found out Amanda was writing a book on it, I was flabbergasted because she wrote one of my favorite books, Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism. And if you haven't read it, highly recommend reading it. It is so fun. And it talks about what modern day cults look like. So maybe we're not in the era of the Mansons and stuff like that, but it does not mean we are any less prone to A, joining a cult like that, or B, our own modern day takes on cults. And she also hosts the hit podcast Sounds Like a Cult. And so this book that she has out now, The Age of Magical Overthinking, is about all of these cognitive biases that we have that impact the way we make decisions. And that is all over our lives and so many spending decisions. So if you want to talk more, if you want to hear more about like spending decisions, some episodes like episode 315, How to Build and Break Habits That Cause You to Overspend, and episode 274, How to Align Your Spending with Your Values. Those are some good ones to queue up for after this, but I'm so excited for you guys to hear this interview with Amanda.
Let's get with her.
Amanda, welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. We are super excited. And if anybody knows us and knows you, then they'll know why we're so excited.
Yes, welcome.
Yes.
I've been looking forward to this. I've been on my finance girly game recently. I have a new accountant.
Hey-o.
We love an accountant. We love an accountant.
I love being a finance girly means you've hired somebody.
I mean, we joke about being the same person. We do actually have the same accountant. I mean,
look, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, actually, my partner and I now have the same accountant, and we love to gossip about him.
We love ours. He has a little lake in the back, and he takes so few clients so that he can have more time to fish between clients. I've never met somebody who has so much disdain for the IRS as our accountant. And
that's a great quality in an accountant.
Love him for this.
Yeah. When you said that he had a pond and takes few clients, I thought you meant he'll only take as many clients as he can fit in his lake boat.
No, opposite.
And that would be a fun constraint.
He doesn't want people around. He wants as few people around as possible. And I love that.
Good for him.
Well, Amanda, you've got so much that you are an expert on. You are a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And I mean, we know that we're excited because you do know a lot about cults, and your podcast is about that. And we eventually, Jen and I, would love to start a cult.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
to
can help
be
you.
able to tie it into personal finance, just real quick, you talk about cognitive biases, and just curious to hear your thoughts on what are they? Why should we care about them?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my new book is called The Age of Magical Overthinking, and it connects to cults actually because so much of the research that I was doing while writing that book, which is about the language of cults from Scientology to SoulCycle, so the full spectrum of influence. As I was doing that research, I came across all this really fascinating psychology and behavioral economics research that made mention of cognitive biases and how things like confirmation bias and the sunk cost fallacy could explain so much of the cult behavior that I was looking into. But more urgently, I felt like these biases could also explain so many of my everyday irrational choices and so many of the irrationalities that I was noticing in the zeitgeist at large. So a cognitive bias is basically this deep-rooted mental magic trick that we play on ourselves in order to help us make efficient decisions as human beings. So we have limited mental capacity, we have limited time, we have limited memory, we have limited psychological resources. We need to be able to jump to conclusions sometimes in order to make everyday decisions. And in early human brains, these shortcuts develop to help us make sense of the world enough to describe it. But in my new book, I kind of make this argument that our ingrained mysticisms and irrationalities that were once so useful to us, net positive in almost every capacity, are now disserving us because they're clashing with the overwhelm of information that we now are exposed to in the digital age.
That was a really helpful and succinct definition. I think that's one of the things that has stood out to me about cognitive biases as well, is I think there can be this negative connotation to it, which there can certainly be problematic, but they first exist as a way to kind of help us move through the world and make quick decisions and be able to kind of operate as a highly functioning human, but then they really can get in the way. How are you seeing this as being really important then to be aware of? Like, what stood out to you in your research and in writing this book as the reason to, whoa, let's really focus in on this? Why are they important?
Yeah. Well, they help us make decisions that are sometimes not the best in today's society in a way that is completely unnoticed and unconscious by us. Cognitive biases were once purely helpful, or at least mostly helpful. And now in our ever complicating, ever technologically driven world, they're not serving us so much. But they're doing that unconsciously. So we don't realize that these many cognitive biases are at play. I mentioned confirmation bias and sunk cost fallacy. These are two of the most famous biases that get the most airplay and headlines and things like that when talking about politics or cults, but there have been hundreds described by psychologists and behavioral economists. In my book, I basically chose my 11 faves, like the 11 that I found to be the most relevant, the most urgent for modern society. And I contextualized them to make them feel more personal, because these can feel like kind of abstract, heady concepts when you just read about them in an academic article or something like that. But the truth is that the sunk cost fallacy doesn't just apply to finances. This, by the way, describes our fallacious penchant to believe that resources already spent on an endeavor, whether it's money, time, or even emotional resources like hope, justify spending even more. And you could easily see how that would have a financial tie, but it also has a personal tie. And so the way that I chose to approach the sunk cost fallacy in my book was from the position of this very sort of vulnerable story where I talk about this cult of one toxic relationship that I was in my early 20s, actually from my late teens to mid 20s. So many of my formative years were spent in this relationship that I kept just sinking costs into, unable to accept that a win wasn't just around the corner. And so I was kind of treating this relationship in a way that you might treat a poker hand, where you've put so much on the table, you can't fold now, or, you know, in keeping like doubling down on a bad stock because you've been investing in it for so long. There are so many parallels to be made. And so these cognitive biases are really important to be aware of and to understand, because that awareness can drive your behavior and improve your decision making, whether you're talking about money or love.
Yeah, I read the book and I really appreciated how you used that example for sunk costs, because I've like read hundreds of articles, and anytime sunk cost comes in, it is always something financial, something money related. And so I thought it was really refreshing to hear, like, and obviously like all of our relational, you know, decisions also have a money factor to them. So yeah, I really appreciated that example.
Thank you. Yeah, that chapter was challenging to write, as you can imagine, because it's vulnerable, more vulnerable than talking about money in a way, but also money is, as you know better than anyone, like such a touchy subject. And so it was cool to be able to, in a way, like personalize conversations that would ordinarily be seen as kind of crass, and kind of like use the personal and the more practical in tandem to make a point.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of these biases that affect our money. Which ones do you believe have the most significant influence on overspending?
Oh my gosh.
Or it can be all of them, but like maybe your faves.
How to choose. I mean, certainly the ones that come to mind are overconfidence bias, zero-sum bias, the sunk cost fallacy for sure, and relatedly, this bias toward additive solutions, which I would love to talk about, because becoming aware of that bias, which is similar or at least connected to the sunk cost fallacy, becoming aware of that one has really informed my decision making regarding spending. Those are, and obviously confirmation bias is something that we can't avoid. It is like the invisible star of all our decision making. But yeah, I would love to talk about additive solution bias, because that one probably has had the most direct practical effect on my own spending.
Okay, yeah, let's start with that one.
Okay, so as I was writing that sunk cost fallacy chapter, I came across this fascinating study that spoke about how we as human beings, but specifically those of us who grow up in consumerist society, have this inclination toward solving a problem by adding things to the equation, even though a more simple solution might involve just taking one little thing away. So the study involved presenting people with a spatial puzzle involving colored blocks. And the study participants were invited to solve the spatial problem by either adding colored blocks or taking away colored blocks. What they didn't know is that this block problem could have been solved in one move by taking one single colored block away. But the vast majority of these study participants went for an additive solution. They decided to add all of these colored blocks in this very cumbersome, you could see how the consumerist parallels come into play, this over the top, extravagant, spendy solution. They were just spending blocks that they didn't have to pay money for. But the point is, the vast majority of people decided to solve this problem in an overcomplicated, additive way. Now, I was mind blown when I came across this study because, first of all, it applied to my relationship. I was like, all I need to solve my miseries in this partnership that is not good for me, all I need is to add, another vacation. We just need to go on another splashy vacation. That'll solve everything. Or we need to get another cat. I don't regret any of my cats. But what they do...
That bias helped you.
Yeah. No, the more cats, the better. That is my additive solution bias. But what those cats did not do was solve my relationship problems. I thought, we just need to add more and more and more and more variables to this equation, and surely that will heal all of our woes, when really what we probably needed to do was just break up. And of course, not every relational problem should be solved by cutting the person out of your life. I do not believe in that whatsoever. And I think that actually there's too much cutting of people out of lives in today's society. Me on my soapbox. But I do think that subtractive solution versus additive solution disparity has been really informative, because now when I make smaller, lower stakes decisions in my everyday life, I'm aware of it, and it can help me from making an irrational choice. So for example, this is a really low stakes example, but I was recently looking at my junk drawer, and I was like, oh my God, this junk drawer is such a mess, so embarrassing. If someone were to come over and look at this, they would think I was deranged. What I need to do is go online and order some really cute drawer organizers. That will help me to add
social media would
shit.
tell you that. Yes.
I need to go to the Container Store, that's going to solve my problem. Same thing with my office. You can't see my office right now, but there's a lot of tchotchkes going on. I was like, I need a beautiful acrylic, desk organizer, some drawers. No, you know what the better solution is? Throw the junk away, pare down, scale back. And I find, again, that awareness can help me make decisions, whether they're financial, consumerist, or more spiritual.
It's such a good example. And I think ties into one of the things we briefly touched on before we hit the record button about the way parameters can create increased creativity, untethered, no limits, no holds barred. We usually aren't as productive, efficient, creative as when we have some reasonable, realistic boundaries around us. And it seems like this is kind of touching on that, where no, we don't have to add. In fact, maybe even taking away makes this whole problem simpler, more easy to solve, and provides better boundaries for us to play within and be creative within.
100%. It really highlights how the term behavioral economics is kind of the perfect term to describe this field of study, because all of these biases are as applicable to finances and this play pretend economic system that we've created in society as they are to our interpersonal relationships and our social lives. And especially in the digital age, so much currency isn't actually monetary. It's clout, it's followers, it's, social relationships. It's these things that are more abstract. And so I think actually now more than ever, as economics and capital become more abstract, more hazy, more confusing, learning about these biases is, it's just more helpful than ever, I think.
Yeah. This isn't a business podcast, but I can't tell you how many times I've thought the solution to our business was adding more things to it. Like
100%.
Right?
Yes.
The real things that have moved the needle have been simplifying. When we simplify and take away, that's when we're able to move faster.
Oh, yeah. Like businesses have gone bankrupt by people adding too many cooks to the kitchen, scaling too quickly. And in capitalist society, like we are taught that growth is, you know, the ultimate goal and you should be growing as quickly as possible. But then I always think of that quote and I forget who said it. Was it Edward Albee? I don't know. I heard of this quote in the movie Triangle of Sadness when Woody Harrelson and that Russian capitalist are having their quote off, but the Woody Harrelson's character says, growth for growth's sake is the ideology of a cancer cell.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah, I wish I'd coined that.
All right.
There we have it.
That's it. Take that one. That's a nugget.
Yeah.
Slap that on a quote, Graham. Merchify it.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And then we'll sell it.
Let's go sell it.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, additive bias. Such a good one. What was another one that you mentioned that we can dive into?
Well, zero-sum bias for sure. And this describes our proclivity to believe that another person's gain directly means your loss. So if another person is thriving, successful, wealthy, attractive, this mental magic trick that we play on ourselves tells us that their wealth, their coolness, their beauty threatens our wealth, our coolness, our beauty, even though that's not how it works. Those things are not in limited quantities, but this bias stems from a time in human history where resources like food and mates really were zero sum. There really were only so many in a community. And so someone who was similar to you, similar in age, similar in build, really was like a material survival threat to you. But because we don't live in those types of communities anymore, that zero-sum bias no longer applies, is no longer helpful, doesn't, inspire us to compete in ways that help us. It can actually set us up for psychological failure because we're applying that deep-rooted shortcut to our social media feeds, to like endless comparisons that we're making socially. And we're also comparing it to the broader economy, this modern economy. And so during times of socio-political turbulence, when we start to feel more scarcity minded, that zero-sum bias really kicks in, and that causes people across the political spectrum to oppose immigration more strictly. It's really fascinating to see how zero-sum bias applies to our lives, whether we're talking about like feeling threatened by another woman because she's attractive, or feeling like we want to close our borders because there's societal tumult.
I could see this impacting our finances in two ways. One being, for the example you gave of, okay, this woman's more beautiful than me. It could propel us to, now I've got to spend more.
That's exactly where I was going. Yeah.
More attractive and feel better about myself. But what I also think can happen with this zero-sum bias that you've just described is we could pull back. We might not pursue the job, the goal that we wanted to because it feels like someone else did it. So now it's taken away from me and I'm not going to achieve what I'm actually capable of. This happened to me, I want to say like 2 months before, and we've not done this yet, but here's an example. About 2 months before Ramit Sethi's Netflix series came out, I was describing to Jen how I want to have a TV show that is about personal finance, where we get into the lives of people and kind of do this whole person look at what are some of the financial moves that can happen, but how does it touch on all the rest of life? And I'm so excited and I'm ramping up and I'm talking to a lot of people about wanting to do this someday. Jen's like, I'm never going to do that. But then that's how I know it's going to happen, because she loves to say never and then do that never thing. We might need to dive into whatever that bias that's attached to. And then this Ramit Sethi thing came out and I'm like, oh, he took it. He already did it. And I have to remind myself that just that only feels that way because no one else is doing this. There's a ton of organization shows. There's a ton of home renovation shows. there should be room then for a ton of financial shows.
Totally.
But there just aren't. And because one person did it, it feels like, well, now we would never be able to do it.
I told her I'd do it if it could be a financial dating show.
And I'm down for that.
We were the Lachey's of the financial dating show.
I love that. Which one of you would be wearing the bandage dress?
Not me. Not it.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because I also want to make the point that dare I say, the patriarchy sets up a very purposeful, intentional zero-sum game for women in particular. I'll say this. Studies reflect that women make more upward social comparisons and downward identifications. So women wage their social bets differently than men based on conditioning, of course. But when a woman, for example, scrolls through her social media feed or enters a room and, surveys everyone in it, she will only clock the perceived threats. She will only be comparing herself to the people that she perceives as wealthier, more attractive, superior in some way. Whereas a man might scroll through his feed or enter a room and only identify the people that he perceives as inferior. And so that style of social comparison has a massive effect on your self-esteem and on your ability to pursue opportunities or to make connections. So zero-sum bias really plays into this reality and this narrative that women are always pitted against each other. It's because we are conditioned by a society that only has, say, one spot in the C-suite for a woman, or only one spot or a couple of spots on the Supreme Court. And thus we view women, specifically women who we perceive as superior, as our competition because we're competing for these limited resources. And that really inhibits collaboration. I took great comfort in this notion called shine theory, which was coined in a viral piece in The Cut about 10 years ago by Amanda Montell and Anne Friedman, which describes this sort of counter strategy to these really debilitating social comparisons, where when we see a woman who we admire, who we think is really cool or industrious or successful, don't get competitive, befriend her, align yourself with her. And it's called the shine theory because it's countering this idea that another person's light dims yours. If you can combine the light, it doesn't take away anyone's light. Everyone burns brighter. And that's kind of corny, but I think it's a really helpful exercise and something that I've applied to my own life. When I see another woman on social media who is, say, doing something in her career that's similar to mine and is doing it well, my impulse is to feel threatened. She'll live rent-free in my head. I'll scroll to see what are her accolades? What has she done that I haven't? As if those things would diminish what I've done. They haven't diminished me at all. And making that enemy when I could be making a friend is not helping anyone. So I have tried to combat those impulses by, instead of feeling threatened and, making an enemy in my mind, to instead slide into that person's DMs, congratulate them sincerely, make a connection. And I've actually forged a lot of friendships that way, real genuine friendships that I can't imagine not being in my life. And it was because I pushed past the zero-sum bias that is in a way innate, but is also encouraged and exacerbated by being a woman in this society.
Yeah, I've thought about this so much in the past years and really had to retrain myself to do this. And then now something I'm coming across is having a bias for women who are slightly more successful than me and feeling inferior and not wanting to reach out to them. So not even they're an enemy, but that I can't reach out to them, and that there's just not enough of their time to go around, so I shouldn't even try. And so I've been trying to take it a step further now. And I don't know if this is directly related to the bias, but it was overcoming this and making more connections with women in the financial field that led me to reach out to more women who are just a little bit ahead of me in the road, and trying to connect with them and appreciate them and glean their wisdom, not in a clingy moocher sort of way, but That's my biggest fear, right? Is I don't want to be a burden
or rejected.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I've been like working through this bias, like in this journey, in this path.
I love that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just think it's such a helpful reframe that you've described, Amanda, to be able to say, here's the bias. Here's why it's important to be aware of biases so that we can identify that the bias is at play and then see, is it helping us or is it hurting us? Is the bias helping me to come to quick conclusions, make efficient decisions, get at the things that I want in life? Or is this diminishing me? Is it not helpful? And to be even able to describe some of these things that we can do instead as a result of identifying the bias, that it doesn't have to even stop at identification. There can be next steps and actions taken that work in contrast to the bias that is actually now hurting us, that hopefully, you're not saying this is where I'm taking it, can become our own bias that we then begin to land on. Like if I say enough, there is space for everybody here at the table because you're going to bring your own perspective, then hopefully that'll just overtake the bias that there's not enough space for everybody.
Totally. I mean, yes, you're kind of referencing another bias that I bring up in the book, this thing called the illusory truth effect, which describes our proclivity to think that something that we've heard repeated multiple times must be true, even if it's not. Like we mistake frequency for accuracy. And this is a bias that a lot of like political figures and, populists take advantage of. And it's very important to be aware of during times like election years and things like that. But you can also use it to your advantage, like if I tell myself over and over again that, another person's light does not dim me, then eventually you will perceive that as accurate.
Is there any other bias that you think has to do with or will help us make better spending decisions? I think we have time for one more.
Yeah. Well, I would love to talk about overconfidence bias.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah, because hold on, let me just make sure, because this is actually when I talk about this bias, it's like not typically in the context of money. So overconfidence bias, it kind of tells on itself. You can imagine what it means, but it's basically this inclination that is defined by like 3 key features. Basically, people overvalue their actual skills, express excessive certainty in their evaluations, and overcredit themselves with positive outcomes. So altogether, this trifecta is known as overconfidence bias. And there have been amazing quotes stated about this. There's a journalist named Roger Lowenstein who wrote a book called When Genius Failed. And in it, he said, there is nothing like success to blind one to the possibility of failure. And what he meant by that is that if we just so happen to get lucky in an endeavor, whether it's a financial endeavor or something else, we will think that like we're the exception and we're just amazing and that we're actually not lucky, but instead the man, and are going to continue succeeding over and over and over again. And so we might continue to make the same decisions, even if they were not the most rational, not the most prudent. And this type of overconfident bullishness is responsible for so many tragedies, from the Challenger space disaster to massive corporate lawsuits to just feeling really smug when you scroll through your social media feed or watch reality TV and think that person is an idiot and I am brilliant. And I would never make a mistake the way that that person is making a mistake. So overconfidence bias shows up in so many arenas of life, including how we set up our lifestyle and spend our money.
Yeah. I think this one might get some of our listeners, but I think overconfidence bias comes up in sale shopping. When we get a sale, we are conditioned to think that we're smarter. Like I did not pay as much for this thing as it's worth. I got a great deal. I'm so good. And so we keep shopping sales even when we don't need the item that is on sale. Because our dopamine release, triggers us to remember that smart feeling, but that can lead to an overconfidence bias.
Oh, and I think this is one that could really harm us beyond the clearance section. This is something where we could take big risks and gamble a lot with our big spending decisions. Like I'm thinking housing, transportation, like our big purchases. One of the things that Eric and I noticed, my husband, we used to live in an RV, and through that process, there were a lot of people who were telling us, oh, I'd love to do that. I would totally want to do that. And some people then did just because, well, you're doing it and it looks easy.
If Jill can do it,
I'm
going
to
to
do it. And they really went all in. And we would try to advise people, hey, rent an RV, go on a 2-week trip just to make sure that this is a lifestyle that you would want to do. But a lot of people we saw sold everything, broke off their lease, sold their house, moved into this thing, and 3 weeks later discover that this is not at all what I want to do. And that's a massive amount of money lost.
Oh my God. Your example is
overconfidence.
Yes. Oh my God. Your example is reminding me so much of an example from my own life. First, I want to make the disclaimer that like overconfidence bias is one of these biases where you're like, no, this does not apply to me. I'm a reasonable person. I hate myself. Like I'm not overconfident. That can't possibly be true. This is a bias that other people enjoy. But with all of these biases that I write about in the book, I really try to invite us all to kind of like look in the mirror. And I try to do that by example. Like every time in that book that I really wanted to like apply overconfidence bias to someone else, I tried to look inward and be like, no, I am completely susceptible to this as well. And oh my God, Jill, your example reminds me of my poor dad. I don't want to put him on blast, but yeah, my dad made a big overconfident financial decision. Get this, in 2008. He was inspired by a friend of his who'd made a killing by building and then renting out a beach house in the Outer Banks. So literally right before the 2008 crash, my dad built a beach house in the Outer Banks and was like, this is going to be an amazing financial investment. Meanwhile, he had absolutely no idea how to do that. Like, regardless of what year it was like a half-baked, like ham-fisted idea. But then, of course, you know, what happened, and that was not the financial win he thought it was going to be. But same thing, he like saw this friend of his, you know, make a killing, and he was like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. It can't be that hard. Now, I will say we've been talking about the pros and cons of all of these biases. Overconfidence bias sounds like truly a net negative sort of phenomenon. But on the positive side, overconfidence leads to innovation, you know, like every time someone makes a meaningful discovery or makes progress in any way, they unlock a new level of knowledge they don't have. And those gaps in understanding actually drive us forward. You know, it's like if I had to know absolutely everything I wanted to say perfectly in the book before putting pen to paper, I would have never started. I would have never finished. And so I do think that sometimes overconfident delusions give us the nerve to like keep moving forward and keep sort of like gunning for progress and a better world. But that overconfidence is a double-edged sword for sure.
So true. It just highlights the importance of being aware of these biases, acknowledging them, and then making decisions rather than relying on the biases to inform us about our next decisions.
Exactly.
For many of us, there comes a time when we need to navigate some complex money situations, and it's tough to know who to trust when receiving crucial financial advice. That's where Fearless Finance comes in.
Fearless Finance is making financial advice more affordable and accessible. They're a fee-only financial planning firm that provides on-demand, comprehensive financial planning by the hour, without the high fees and long-term commitments that come with traditional financial advisors. You can quit whenever you want with no strings attached.
Their planners meet you where you are at on your financial journey. So whether you're looking to buy a house, optimize your savings, or just want to get expert eyes on your finances to ensure you're on the right track, they can answer your questions and help you achieve your goals.
Visit fearlessfinance.com today to get started. You can chat with a planner for free to make sure it's a good fit. and you'll get $50 off your first planning meeting when you use the code FRUGAL.
Bring a little optimism into your life with The Bright Side, a new kind of daily podcast from Hello Sunshine, hosted by me, Danielle Robay.
And me, Simone Boyce. Every weekday, we're bringing you conversations about culture, the latest trends, inspiration, and so much more.
Thank you for taking the light, and you're going to shine it all over the world, and it makes me really happy.
I never imagined that I would get the chance to carry this honor and help be a part of this legacy.
Listen to The Bright Side on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search The Bright Side.
My name is Johnny B. Good, and I'm the host of the new podcast, Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin. Over this 9-part series, I'll explore the life and crimes of my best friend, Ray Trapani.
I always wanted to be a criminal. If someone's like, oh, what's your best way of making money? I'm like, oh, we should start some sort of scheme.
You see, Ray has this unique ability to find loopholes and exploit them.
They collected $30 million. There were headlines about it.
His company, Centratech, was one of the hottest crypto startups in 2017. It was going to change the world, until it didn't.
I came into my office, opened my email, and the subject heading was FBI request.
It was only a matter of time before the truth came out.
You can only fake it till you make it for so long before they find out that your Harvard degree is not so crimson.
How could you sit there and do something that you know will objectively cause more harm in the world?
Listen to Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, I'm going to take a hard left turn because it's our podcast and our journey.
Yeah.
And this is really what we want to talk about. So you know a lot about cults.
Sure. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is consumerism a cult?
Yeah, dude, I think so. I keep unpacking my own cultish affiliations every single day, even after all of these years writing and talking about cults. I was just thinking of this the other day. I was like, it is really a massive false promise in our society that things, objects, even just like owning a house, will offer you some kind of spiritual existential transcendence. Like, I am so disturbed by how I have fallen prey to this consumerist lie that like acquiring materials, and by materials, I even mean like your own your own home dwelling. How nuts is this? It's like people weren't even as competitive and as individualist and as sort of like selfish and comparison oriented as we are now until we started living in our own separate domiciles. Like as soon as the agricultural revolution happened and people started settling in like these stagnant communities and building homes that only their little family lived in, that's when we started being like, I want to be richer than you. I want to have better stuff than you. But it's not a natural or innate human state. Like we can be more generous. We can be more giving. Like it is not endemic to us to like hoard, you know, but in combination with just various advancements in the human species and also like late stage capitalism, sorry, buzzwords, but truly like this combination of events has caused us to buy into this cultish promise that like having stuff is not just going to make life, you know, easier or more convenient. It's going to make you feel like you literally won at life. Like you are existentially better than others and will even cheat death. Like that's how it feels. And it's such a lie. It's such a cultish lie.
Yes. And how can Jill and I, who is the cult leader and who do we have to fight?
How can we start a cult?
Yeah. who do we have to fight to be the cult leader?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's not that simple. Like, that's what makes these really broad, sort of more loosey-goosey cults so sinister, is that there isn't just one Keith Raniere in the cult of consumerism. It's like, you got Jeff Bezos over there, you got Elon Musk over there, you've got, you know, Donald Trump over here. Like, but those are just like some really, really big power players, but we're all sort of perpetuating this cult influencer culture certainly is. Consumer culture in every shade and flavor is like self-propelling this cult. And then the tough part is that when people who are like radically on the other side being like, relinquish all your possessions and live a monastic lifestyle, when they come into the picture, they can start a cult too.
They have so many cults. They have their own. They have so many.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
It's
like,
just extremes.
Yeah.
Extremes.
Every end of the extreme. Yeah.
Extremes are worth avoiding.
Yeah, and we talk about that. I do love your book, Cultish, that is already out. And, when this releases, your new book will be out too. But I love your where you like take it at the end, like what are the cults of our modern age, and thinking like, oh, we're not like the 60s and 70s, like we don't have stuff like that anymore, and really diving into like what is where we're going and how financially, like how much money it will require of us if we continue down the path.
Totally. And there was like a direct line between those ideas and the new book too, because for Cultish, I kind of had to like stick to the thesis and framework of cults. But with this new book, I was kind of able to apply those same ideas to everyday life in a way that's a little bit more accessible and relatable. And that whole transition from Cultish to this project felt like really natural and really fun to me.
Yeah.
Do you want to know another transition that is really natural and really fun
every week? Oh, what a great
nice
segue.
That really good one.
The Bill of the Week!
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We said we'd yell.
Amanda,
yell.
every week we yell at our guests to share with us their bill. And we are so here to hear yours. We got a little taste of it before we hit record, so excited to hear.
Let me preface my Bill of the Week by saying that in order to communicate it, I had to first Google the difference between a beak and a bill. And a quickie Google search told me that they're synonyms. A beak and a bill are the same. So
and we said we'd allow it.
Yes. Thank you.
We'll allow synonyms.
My Bill of the Week, aka my Beak of the Week, which is fun because it rhymes, has to do with the bills of the peacocks that run free at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery near my house. So this famous cemetery in Hollywood where like Burt Reynolds is buried and Marilyn Monroe is buried is a very, very beautiful place that I will sometimes go to literally just like sunbathe or chill out. You're surrounded by graves, but like there are also ponds, maybe not dissimilar to your accountant's pond. There are like beautiful buildings. There's a cafe. It's like a lovely, lovely place to hang. Also, during the summer, they have movie screenings there, outdoor movie screenings, which is a vibe. It's a very, very trendy thing to do in LA. But my favorite thing about Hollywood...
No more parks. You've got to hang out at the cemetery.
Yeah. No, I love
cemeteries over parks.
As macabre and gallows humor-filled as I can make my life, the better. But my favorite thing about the Hollywood Forever Cemetery is all of the peacocks that run wild because it feels so sort of surreal. And peacocks are so beautiful, and famously they have bills. So that's my Bill of the Week. Go hang out in a graveyard with famous.
Do you think NBC planted those there? Like, do you think that's marketing?
No, they've been I like that conspiracy theory, but those peacocks have been there since long before any of these dime a dozen streamers.
We do love a good conspiracy theory too.
Oh, yes, we do.
We do. We've got to do more spin-off podcasts, Jen.
This is
not it for us. We've not peaked.
But peacocks, man, are so exotic, but they are so many places. My son's daycare is in a neighborhood where peacocks just roam free in this neighborhood.
We had a peacock at the end of
in
our road.
Florida.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like it's just that the neighborhoods have peacocks, but they are still
Hollywood's
so exotic.
not the only place with
Okay, fair
peacocks.
enough. Sorry. Yeah. But I will relate this back to the subject matter at hand, because one piece of sort of more serviceable advice that I give in the book for combating some of the more negative consequences of the clash between these cognitive biases in the information age is to prioritize feelings of awe whenever possible. AWE. Awe, depending on your accent. And, being in nature and like really appreciating the like marvels of a peacock in a graveyard, or like roaming free through the streets, like stopping to appreciate the novelty of that. Stopping to appreciate the novelty of that and the wonder of that, and to sort of like connect with the physical world, is just such a lovely way to reprioritize your mental stresses. And so I guess my ultimate point in like recommending the bills of peacocks is that like it can, very literally ground you amidst like such a confusing time.
Lovely tie-in. Beautiful segue. If any of you all listening have a bill about peacocks roaming in a cemetery,
if you got a beak of
the
week,
it inspires, or your name is Bill and you own a peacock, or just anything.
Don't tell us on the show. I don't know if you're allowed to own a peacock.
Visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill. We are ready and waiting for it. For many of us, there comes a time when we need to navigate some complex money situations, and it's tough to know who to trust when receiving crucial financial advice. That's where Fearless Finance comes in.
Fearless Finance is making financial advice more affordable and accessible. They're a fee-only financial planning firm that provides on-demand, comprehensive financial planning by the hour, without the high fees and long-term commitments that come with traditional financial advisors. You can quit whenever you want with no strings attached.
Their planners meet you where you are at on your financial journey. So whether you're looking to buy a house, optimize your savings, or just want to get expert eyes on your finances to ensure you're on the right track, they can answer your questions and help you achieve your goals.
Visit fearlessfinance.com today to get started. You can chat with a planner for free to make sure it's a good fit. And you'll get $50 off your first planning meeting when you use the code FRUGAL.
Bring a little optimism into your life with The Bright Side, a new kind of daily podcast from Hello Sunshine, hosted by me, Danielle Robay.
And me, Simone Boyce. Every weekday, we're bringing you conversations about culture, the latest trends, inspiration, and so much more.
Thank you for taking the light, and you're going to shine it all over the world, and it makes me really happy.
I never imagined that I would get the chance to carry this honor and help be a part of this legacy.
Listen to The Bright Side on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search The Bright Side.
My name is Johnny B. Good, and I'm the host of the new podcast, Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin. Over this 9-part series, I'll explore the life and crimes of my best friend, Ray Trapani.
I always wanted to be a criminal. If someone's like, oh, what's your best way of making money? I'm like, oh, we should start some sort of scheme.
You see, Ray has this unique ability to find loopholes and exploit them.
They collected $30 million. There were headlines about it.
His company, Centratech, was one of the hottest crypto startups in 2017. It was going to change the world, until it didn't.
I came into my office, opened my email, and the subject heading was FBI request.
It was only a matter of time before the truth came out.
You can only fake it till you make it for so long before they find out that your Harvard degree is not so crimson.
How could you sit there and do something that you know will objectively cause more harm in the world?
Listen to Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now it's time for the lightning round. Pew, 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 pew.
I love these segments. I really appreciate a segment.
Yeah, we do too. And we do all of our own
sound
sound effects.
Yeah, as realistic as they sound, believe it or not, it's just our mouths on the mic.
Yeah, you would think that we were professionals in LA, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure.
I thought that was the sound designer.
Yeah.
I thought it was this real spaceship and a real explosion.
Yeah,
well
but
done.
we're just here in St. Petersburg, Florida. You know, nobody's called us out there yet. All right. So for the lightning round, this is our vulnerability round. What's a purchase that you've made or you make, whatever, but it stems from a cognitive bias? Maybe you still choose to make it or you've chosen to stop.
Yeah. I recently bought this $130 LED candlestick lamp type thing. It looks like the type of candlestick that a tuberculosis-ridden Victorian child would carry around at night, but it's LED. And so you can like touch the wick and it will illuminate or deluminate, if that's a word, accordingly. And I am obsessed with this thing. It was so overpriced, but it really allows me to live out a nostalgic fantasy of the 1800s, a time that I certainly would not prefer to live in. But I do like to sort of delulu about that. And that relates to a cognitive bias called declinism, which is associated with nostalgia. Declinism describes our false perception that life is just getting irreversibly worse and worse and worse, and it's all downhill from there.
I did not know about that one. You have diagnosed me. You have diagnosed me.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Are you going to take it to the cemetery? And
that is a genius idea.
Yeah. I hope to see pictures.
That is the full starter pack. Like me, a cognitive bias text, my LED wick lamp, and a graveyard. Obsessed.
I am looking forward to seeing that. Jill?
So mine is something that causes me to not spend. I'm not a super spendy person, but status quo bias leads me to not buy because I think the current state of affairs is fine. It's okay that our door scratches the floor every time we open it. We've lived this long. Why spend $500 on a new door? It's fine.
I'm
Let the
completely
floor
with you.
scratch.
There's fire everywhere.
I am completely with you. I am like so miserly when it comes to necessities and spendy when it comes to these like delusional fantasy items.
Yes.
Yep. That's all of us. I mean, the things that cost a couple $100s that would literally improve the quality of our lives, can't afford that.
Yeah.
But
we don't want to pay the dentist. We don't want to change the oil. We don't want to pay taxes.
But I
just went to the dentist.
$6 on a latte.
Fully. I just went to the dentist for the first time in 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I got you beat. Hate to break
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so listen to this. I went in there and I was like, I am so ashamed. I haven't been here since before the pandemic. I know that I'm going to need a mouth replacement. I am so sorry.
Because of declinism.
Because, yes. Yeah, honestly. But like, she looked in my mouth and she was like, you have 4 tiny cavities that like barely need to be filled, low-key. And I was like, oh, slay.
Yeah. Yes.
So that could be you.
I mean, maybe it's a myth because, you know, we love a good conspiracy theory. Maybe dentists are a myth. But also, hardly anybody goes anymore because apparently medical insurance deems our eyes and our mouths not worthy.
Not necessary.
You just don't need those.
Okay.
So we'll cover everything else, but not your eyes, your teeth.
That is the medical system trying to dull our senses. They want us to have unhealthy eyes and unhealthy mouths.
Just stop eating and, you know, a slow decline.
No, just eat soup. Soup. It's big soup. I think it's big soup. Yeah.
Okay, no, I actually do think that the dentist is a giant scam. Everyone's constantly trying to get me to take out my wisdom teeth. I'm like, yeah, the way that we all once had to take out our tonsils for no reason or appendix for no reason. I'm only taking it out if it's a problem. You ding dong. That's not happening.
Yeah.
So much passion. So much passion. Okay, for me, it is the overconfidence bias. By a mile. So I would always, and I don't do this as much anymore, just mostly because I don't have time, but I used to think that I could do any craft. Like if somebody else can do it, I can do it.
It's so funny because you're not crafty.
I'm not
this
crafty.
I'm
not a DIYer.
Yeah.
I am not. But I would see calligraphy and macrame, and I bought the things to do both of them. And guess what? I can't do it.
No.
And I definitely don't enjoy it, even if I could do it. Almost. And this is most recent. I've been getting ads for adult paint by number. And it's been like, if this woman in this ad can do it, and it turns like I can't paint, but I can follow directions, and maybe that's all I need. You know, like I can follow directions. And then I remind myself, you are not crafty. You do not enjoy it. And even if you could, you wouldn't want to. You wouldn't finish it. So that's fine.
I couldn't relate to that more. I'm basically Edward Scissorhands.
Yes, that's me. Just cutting things up, and they don't look like the origami they're supposed to, though. Just shreds.
Oh, this has been some good vulnerability and such an amazing episode, Amanda. Yes. Thanks for being here with us. If people want more from you, where can they find it?
Can I ask when this is coming out? Because depending on that, I'm going to plug different things.
It is on April 12th.
Okay, perfection. Amazing. Well, my book, The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality, is now available wherever books are sold, even in audiobook. I recorded my own audiobook, which was so much fun. And actually, fun fact, the little cue of like beautiful music that plays during the introduction of the audiobook, I hate the word fiance, but my engaged betrothed partner person composed. He's a film and TV composer.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta check it out. And then I'm also on tour right now at the time that this is airing. I'm on this really over-the-top book tour. My inner theater kid emerged in full force. And so if you live in Brooklyn, Boston, Philly, Portland, you gotta go to amandamontell.com/events because I'm throwing this extravagant variety show called The Big Magical Cult Show, which is like magical, like the new book, and culty, like the old book. And there are podcaster special guests like Kelsey from Normal Gossip. And it's gonna be a hoot. So yeah, definitely get tickets. amandamontell.com/events.
That's so exciting.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amanda. And yeah, go get that book. I had so much fun geeking out over cognitive biases.
Yeah, this interview just makes me smile. I think Amanda is so articulate, so wise in her own right with the things that she's expert on. And I think really highlighted for me just areas that I've never thought about before, and how that can play into our spending and just all of life, the things that we can be aware of and how it can help us financially. I'm just excited. And it was just fun.
Yeah.
I just love to have fun.
We make so many assumptions about life. And yes, that's our brain protecting us from making too many decisions and making us far more tired than we already are. But it is required for us to question our assumptions and see if they are due to some of these cognitive biases. So I hope that you'll continue to think about and rethink about the assumptions you make in your life.
Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. We are really loving to read your kind reviews. So some of you keep giving us reviews, which we love and we welcome and we ask for. And we want to highlight this one. It comes from I Love T-Dog with a W. It says, amazing. It's 5 stars. Very helpful podcast. Completely changed lives financially. Thank you.
Wow.
Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
I mean, congrats to you and T-Dog for making the changes you needed to make. And yeah, thank you. And please leave us a rating and review. It helps us look legit. It makes us feel good. It gives us overconfidence bias, like all these good things that we need in our lives.
Yeah. And yeah, please leave us those reviews and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Siriani.
Okay, I noticed my cognitive bias at play again yesterday. What did I say mine was? Status quo bias, not wanting to change or disrupt anything.
You were about to disrupt some things this morning, but we'll talk about that in another episode.
So Eric and I usually do our grocery shopping at Walmart. You heard it here, folks. Not sponsored. Because we can get our other toiletry items that we need there. Like, yes. I love Aldi, but oftentimes it's every 2 weeks at Walmart. And one of the things that we do only when we have to go to more so the toiletry section, which we did. We needed more toothpaste. Eric needed face wash. That is where the clearance section is for all of Walmart. So we will often do a round at the clearance section. This is about a once a month tradish for us. And, you know, I guess just to like tempt yourself a little bit with a little yellow sticker. But I also, as you know, keep a running list of the things that I want to be purchasing, things that I need. Mm-hmm. And so if there happens to be anything in the clearance section, great. Well, there wasn't, at least for me. Eric doesn't keep a running list, but he's like, there's so much stuff here that I want. They had all kinds of stuff for boats, like a new boat cover that could work for the boat that we have, new liner for the inside, like hatches that he wants to eventually redo. I think the boat trailer, the covers that the boat sits on needs to be recovered.
Wow.
But none of
boat
it
people.
has
Am I right?
to be done. So there's a saying, the greatest day of your life is the day you buy your boat and the day you sell your boat. And like, it's just the truth. We don't have anything fancy. Don't get it twisted. Don't be picturing like a yacht. We've got a small fishing boat that does the job.
It's a tiny yacht. It's a micro yacht.
I think it costs like $1,000. Anyways, it costs so much to maintain, especially with this one who wants to just keep doing stuff to it. Mm-hmm. We didn't, because I'm just like, is the cover we have currently broken? Nope. But we are going to need one eventually in like 2 years. I'm like, then I'll worry about my $20 savings in 2 years from now. You know, we need to redo this and that. And it's just like, all it really is going to do is take up space in the garage that he just cleaned out. And we didn't. I mean, it wasn't like he was begging for it either, but that was my status quo bias. Just, it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, that's a great bias.
It does help me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're always fixing and maintaining things to the highest degree.
Yeah. I mean, but it helped you with the boat person, with the boat guy. It helped you with the boat guy.
Status quo. Just, even if it's broken.
Keeping it unremarkable. Yeah. Under promise, under deliver.
Bring a little optimism into your life with The Bright Side, a new kind of daily podcast from Hello Sunshine, hosted by me, Danielle Robay.
And me, Simone Boyce. Every weekday, we're bringing you conversations about culture, the latest trends, inspiration, and so much more.
I am so excited about this podcast, The Bright Side. You guys are giving people a chance to shine a light on their lives, shine a light on a little advice that they want to share.
Listen to The Bright Side on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search The Bright Side.
I'm Johnny B. Good, the host of the podcast Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin. This podcast dives deep into the story of Ray Trapani and his company, Centratech. I'll explore how three 20-somethings built a company out of lies, deceit, and greed.
I've been saying since a very young age that I was going to be a millionaire. If someone's like, oh, what's your best way of making money? I'm like, oh, we should start some sort of scheme.
Listen to Creating a Con, the story of Bitcoin on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I used to have so many men.
How this beguiling woman in her 50s,
she looked like $1 million,
scams a bunch of famous athletes out of untold fortunes.
Nearly $10 million was all gone.
It's just unbelievable.
Hide your money in your old rich man, because she is on the prowl.
Listen to Queen of the Con, Season 5, The Athlete Whisperer, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.